am so excited to be speaking with such an incredible professional today. I don't want to give too much away, except to say that the things I have learned from her have made such a difference to the way I work professionally and the information I share with families. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Katie. Good morning, Katie.
Hi, Justine. I am Katie James, and I am a midwife, and also the long title is International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, or IBCLC. And I run a podcast and I do online lactation courses for parents to be, pregnant women, their families, but also for midwives, doulas, people who work in the birth and the postnatal space. So my passion is to increase people's knowledge who need breastfeeding support and information in any sphere and at any level. So that's my thing. And I also host a podcast called The Midwife's Cauldron with a colleague of mine, and we're both midwives, and we talk about many things. We do a lot of moaning, we do a bit of singing, we do a lot of laughing, and we do interview some amazing people as well. Oh, and I also offer like private lactation consults globally and also in this room I'm in now. But that's not accessible to everybody, particularly in Australia. I'm a little bit far away because I'm in Switzerland. So I do that as well.
The name lactation consultant, lots of people don't know what that is and what a lactation consultant would do. So do you mind kicking off with that, telling us what a lactation consultant offers?
It's a really good question, particularly as now there is so many acronyms for lactation or breastfeeding support. The difference is that there is breastfeeding counselors, breastfeeding peer, certified lactation counselors, but the IBCLC qualification means that someone like me had to be a health professional to start with, and also had to have a minimum of 90 hours of theory-based training. But also when I was doing it, it was 2,500 hours of practical, hands off, but hands on, so to speak, support with mums and babies and families, feeding, so that I'm working alongside a mentor. And then what you have to do is you then have to do, at that point, it was a 6-hour exam. And then every 5 years, we need to make sure that we have 75 hours of ongoing education to make sure that we're up to date. And so I suppose the lactation consultants are the top level of knowledge about breastfeeding support, the lactation processes, because it's not always breastfeeding. Sometimes it's expression and pumping support. Sometimes it's support for mums whose babies have been needed to go into the neonatal ward because they're born a bit too soon or very, very soon, or perhaps their baby's unwell, or perhaps their child's unwell. So also my job would include, when I was working in the hospital, working in the pediatric intensive care. So perhaps if babies have had to have surgery, going into the children's ward. So maybe if babies have like a respiratory problem and they're unwell at 6 months or longer. It also involves giving support of returning to work and things like that. But really, you know, our main job is when those complications really happen in the early days and weeks. But what I suppose I want to emphasize is that the midwife or the doula that's supporting you, but particularly midwives, they are skilled in the, I suppose, the basics of good breastfeeding support. And when you would call in a lactation consultant is kind of when things are going wrong and it's slightly outside of the scope of the midwife, and you need someone who's just got a broader range of information. And so we can actually work alongside your midwife, work alongside the neonatal nurse, or even with pediatricians as well, so that we can work as a multidisciplinary team to be saying, this is how I see it. And I should say also working with the mom. I'm looking down here. I do have a doll down here. That's why. And the baby, and the family dynamics, because it's all well and good knowing theory of what's going on, but we also need to make sure that this feeding plan works on an individual level. So that's kind of the difference, is it's just like that next level of knowledge.
That's really useful to know. But something that jumps out at me straight away is here in Australia, people are being discharged from hospital really early. And
Mm.
so maybe there isn't that instant knowledge from any other supports available, perhaps even as soon as a week after the baby's born. So, who are the kind of people who you would see, or what are the kind of problems that are most common, do you think?
Two most common problems are sore nipples, sore, painful, damaged nipples because of how the baby is attaching to the breast, mostly, sometimes because of restrictions in the tongue called a tongue tie. But that's actually a much smaller percentage than kind of social media would have us believe. And so often it's actually how we are putting our baby onto the breast. And, you're learning a new skill, like anything, it takes time. And, there's no perfection there. It's like one feed might be really good, the next feed might be just not great, and maybe some damage has happened. And when that's happening over the first few days, it's really normal, unfortunately, to feel some soreness, and that peaks around about day 5, and then around about day 7 we should be seeing that disappear and breastfeeding becoming comfortable. And if it isn't, then that's a sign of some nuances that we can probably help to fix and just make it more comfortable. So the biggest reason that women stop breastfeeding is for soreness, pain. The second biggest reason is low milk supply or perceived low milk supply. And this is a tricky one because we have a lot of external influence, still to this day saying, are you still feeding that baby? How often do you feed that baby? Are you sure they need a feed? Or mistaking certain cues that come after a month that the baby's hungry. There's all these things to learn, like I said. But the other thing is that low milk supply is at a much greater chance with the more kind of medicalization of childbirth. And so if we're using intervention like epidurals and induction of labor, this is like we're using an intervention. So perhaps the body just needs a bit more of a kick start. It's like to get the motor running. And we might need to use an intervention for a few days to just, get the breasts and the hormones to work a bit better. Maybe your baby's a bit sleepy and it's just not kicking start those milk making cells from working. And so that might be we bring in a pump and we bring in a feeding plan. Not for everybody, but so really those two things are the most common reasons that you would mostly need support. There are many others, but these can be the really tricky ones to navigate in that first week.
Absolutely. I think something that stood out for me there was when you said that for many people, breastfeeding may be uncomfortable in the first 5 or so days. Would it be sensible, do you think, to preempt that and to see a lactation consultant or book an appointment before you've even had your baby, or when you've had them, and to see one fairly soon afterwards? Or is that a kind of overkill? Do you think you should wait till you have problems or preempt?
That is a really good question. What is difficult is that there isn't necessarily enough lactation consultants to go around. There is a good high percentage in Australia, and also sometimes it's not free. So that means that the access is not available to everybody. Should you have good support beforehand and good knowledge and training about, okay, if this happens, this is how I can kind of get myself out of this sticky situation? Yes. Should you see a lactation consultant specifically beforehand? No. If you've got a good supportive midwife, absolutely, that's brilliant. But what I would suggest, and lots of people don't think they're able to do this, but is to find like your local breastfeeding support group and rock up there without your baby outside, but with your baby inside, and go and watch people breastfeed. Because what you'll see at a breastfeeding support group is someone with an 8-month-old, a 4-month-old, a 3-month-old, and some brand new babies. And all of them will be different. And everybody's got a piece of like good golden nuggety pieces of advice to kind of make you go, oh, okay, so it's there's lots of challenges, but I'll be able to get through. And also, I think what that does is, you know, these first 3 days, 4 days a week can be incredibly overwhelming. You're exhausted mostly. And to then rock up at a new group where you don't know any faces can be scary and you don't know what to expect. Whereas if you've walked through those doors 2 or 3 times, you've met a few people, you know that there's going to be a warm welcome for you and maybe even a cup of tea. You're much more likely to go and get support. And I think the problem with society as it is now is we don't have women just sitting around with a baby on them like we used to. We don't actually see, we might see this and there'll be like a cover over the top. How many times, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get my boob out, this one. How many times do you actually see the baby attach onto the nipple and the areola? Never, because we look away because we think it's a bit rude. But in a breastfeeding group, no one looks away because everyone's got their boobs out. So it's fine. But if you haven't had that opportunity and you are in those early days and you don't have good support from the midwives for whatever reason, maybe it's just the setup of the hospital system, if you're in that system, or you've run into problems, the sooner you go and get support, the sooner you're going to sort it out, and the less chance of going, you know, deep diving into this kind of, we've got a real problem here. So definitely seek the support and advice of a lactation consultant. And yes, you will probably have to pay privately. That isn't available for everybody, but if it is, that should be higher on your list than something material, so to speak, because most women, particularly in Australia, 96% of women start breastfeeding. So that shows that nearly every woman wants to breastfeed, but we have a very sharp decline very quickly of stopping breastfeeding. And we can prevent that by kind of getting in early.
Excellent advice. But you're talking about people who don't have an obvious issue in advance. What about, because I help facilitate some education classes in a main hospital where I know they're lucky enough to have a breastfeeding service. And so there are a certain range of people that I recommend might seek the advice early for a lactation consultant. Would you mind talking about what those issues may be that you might highlight that, oh, I should be seeing one or getting some further advice in advance, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a group of women who particularly have maybe certain medical conditions. So things like diabetes, if you have twins or more on board, if you know that your baby is going to be born prematurely, if you've had problems beforehand, so this is your second or third baby and you've had breastfeeding challenges, often that can be a really difficult place to then say, okay, I really want to try again this time. What can be really validating is going and seeing a lactation consultant and actually saying this happened. And when you tell me the story, I can pinpoint probably the times and the reasons why certain factors ended up happening and reassure you that, do you know what, this time we'll do it differently. And this time we can put this in place. We can make sure this doesn't happen. And it just makes you go, oh, okay, I understand. Because that's something, a massive challenge is to go, I don't understand why it didn't happen. And often what we hear is, oh, well, my mum couldn't breastfeed, or my mum was told that her milk wasn't good enough. Oh my God, that old chestnut. Milk is always good enough. Okay, it's just whether they're getting enough. And that's what's so important, is often it's really, for me, kind of simple changes that I can help you to show you how to do it yourself, to make you feel confident. So really medical conditions. So anything where you're needing to see an obstetrician because you have a medical condition or your baby has a medical condition. And they're the main things. That's the easiest way to cluster that, I suppose. And yes, if you've got multiples. because then we might be talking about things like antenatal hand expression or not. And we might be putting in a plan in place to say, okay, we're going to book you in to come and see us. We're going to prepare. We're going to just also bring down that kind of stress levels, because if you've got a baby who has a cleft palate or a cleft lip, this can be incredibly anxiety provoking. And actually, you might come and speak to me and I say, look, this is my experience and this is what we can do and this is the plan and blah, 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 and show you pictures. And and you and whoever you bring with you to the appointment can go, oh, okay, we can do this. That's fine. And I know how to support you and you know how to support me. And it's just that kind of planting the seed of positivity rather than planting the seed of doubt.
Often I'll talk in my sessions about inverted nipples. What is there some advice or some guidelines you could give broadly around those, knowing that we're all individual?
Oh, that's a good one. I should have mentioned that. Thank you for picking me up. See, good midwives know their stuff. You don't always have to see an IBCLC. God, it's a long name. Inverted nipples. So I have this, but this is not the best. I should have bought my other boob. And we have lots of boobs when we're lactation consultants, breasts, I mean. And inverted nipples can mean that it's sort of just in a bit or it's really in. And for the most part, with a stimulation either from your fingers, your hands, a pump, we can evert the nipple, so to speak, and bring it out. But there's around about 4% of women that have what we call true inversion. So the nipple stays back in regardless of any of the stimulation or techniques that we try. And this can be a bit of a challenge for some babies to attach onto the breast. And so that can be really reassuring to see someone beforehand, or make sure someone comes to see you as soon as possible afterwards, because that will be techniques where we might shape the breast in different positions, but we might also use things such as a nipple shield. But again, these are tools and techniques that we use, and we might use them temporarily or for a certain period of time. But then we also want to make sure that when we use these tools, that your baby is still getting to the breast and attaching well and able to actually pull the milk out of the breast effectively. So we don't want to just give you something and say, go and buy a nipple shield, and you don't know what size, which one, how to apply it, how long to use it for, how do I attach my baby? So there's a whole host of things. When we introduce something, we want to know the what, why, and the how long. So with inverted nipples, I would say don't panic too much, but it's good to learn different shaping techniques to know that it might not be for those first few days until your baby is actually able to attach onto the breast. And that might just be because when babies are born, our skulls can change shape, and maybe that just makes our face shape different, and attachment is difficult. It might be that we need to show you different positions to feed your baby, or making you feel comfortable just allowing your baby to attach themselves. There's a lot of ways that we can help, but this depends also on the ergonomics of the breast. Not every breast looks like this. I don't think any breasts look like this. I've never seen them this color. But we have different size breasts, different shaped breasts. One nipple points there, one here, one down there. That's normal. Don't worry. And my job is to be able to go, okay, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at the baby, and let's see what the best fit is. And that might take a couple of feeds for us to work out what's going to work. But I think reassurance with anything that makes you go, I don't feel normal, in quotes, because we are all normal. Trust me, all breasts are normal. They're just variants. And I've seen thousands, so don't panic. And I think reassurance is the key, and finding someone that you feel that you can trust, you're happy in their space, and you can then work out a plan that works for you and baby.
Excellent advice. I love it. I was thinking, when you're talking about what the most common things and people are having the sense that there's this presumed or assumed low milk supply.
Oh,
Can you tell
yes.
us a little bit about that? Because I think that's the reason many people give up. And I know from talking to people, it isn't that they know there's not enough. It's just that they think maybe their baby's not getting enough. And that anxiety is enough to stop people feeding. But what about when it maybe the baby isn't gaining weight? Have you got some useful advice or tips about what they could either do, or is that too big a topic to discuss in a couple of minutes?
I'm going to direct people to listen to one. Oh, I've got to think what episode it was, but it's called something about formula supplementation, the traps and something. It's but that's off the top of my head, and it's there, and it's on YouTube, and it's on podcasts all over your podcast hosts. And I talk for an hour about the top up traps. So first, I'm just going to go on to presumed, or when we believe that our baby's not getting enough, regardless of maybe a big Michelin baby sitting there who's totally healthy. But if we think that our baby is crying more than our best friends or the people in the group, or our baby feeds too much, so they're feeding 12 to 13 times a day, which is still in the realms of normal, but everyone we know's baby feeds sort of every 3-4 hours, you're going to start thinking, am I doing something wrong? That's normal. If your baby's feeding every hour and a half to 2 hours, then, but maybe is sleeping really well through the night, we have to look at the total number of feeds in a 24 hours. But I go into much more detail about how we can just introduce a formula feed when we don't need it, and how this can be this kind of cascade spiral into stopping breastfeeding. And this is a huge factor that goes on, because we think we'll just give one bottle. And then, of course, the baby sleeps, and then we give another one. And what happens is your breasts are really clever. It takes a lot of energy to be lactating. And if you give your breast any signal that you're weaning, it pays attention and it goes, oh, you don't need this feed. And so your milk supply goes down and you start using more and more formula. So that's the top up trap. And this is often what happens when people perceive that their baby is hungry, when actually in front of them is this beautiful, healthy, weeing, pooing, getting those lovely fat rolls baby. So look at your baby holistically and seek help if you're concerned, because the biggest reasons is that we are unsure what normal, or the realms of normal crying and sleeping are. And so finding that out is really good, and trying to block out all of those. Are you feeding that baby again? Now, there are times on the other end of the scale when we have a baby who is struggling to gain weight, and that can mean that they feed exceptionally frequently. So we might be seeing hourly feeds, hourly and a half, all the way through the 24-hour period. And, by day 7, by day 5, really, the Dolly Parton should come to town, the milk should be in, and the baby should be feeding anywhere between kind of 8 and 12 times in 24 hours, maybe 13. But if they're feeding kind of 17 times a day, then, and their weight is not really improving as we would expect on the WHO, the World Health Organization feeding charts, or they're not pooing or weeing enough, then this is when I would want you to see a lactation consultant, ideally, to just have a look. And again, what are we looking at? The first thing we look at is where you are, like where you are psychologically. That's the most important thing. So we can work out what's going on as a dynamic. Then we're going to look at what's going on with the breasts. Are they making enough milk? Do you have any pain? If they're not making enough milk, how can we increase the milk supply? And then, of course, we're looking at your bambino. We're looking at their face structure, their body, their tone, but also I'm checking their tongue and inside their mouth. I'm also looking at how they are attaching onto the breast and what's happening when their mouth attaches around the nipple and the areola, and can I make any adjustments there? So it's a holistic approach. And again, there are windows of time to make enough milk. And really, we need to be looking at the first 2 to 4 weeks, because this is when your body is really building that milk supply. And that's when we need to get in there. If there's a problem, we need to get in early, because we've got a time limit of when we can increase your milk supply sufficiently.
Fantastic. With the top-up trap, the one thing I get asked the most as a midwife and not a lactation consultant is preempting, because this is in the education classes. Yes, but how can I have that for one full night's sleep? Is that acceptable? Can I manage that and my partner give food in another way? What literally everyone's saying, give or take a small percentage in advance of having their baby. So what happens when they have their baby? Do you find that it's something they no longer want, or there is something some advice that would really help that to work, or would you say just steer clear of it for a time frame?
Yeah, that is such a common question and a brilliant one for you to ask. It's tricky because, as midwives, as lactation consultants, of course, I want to gift someone sleep, and lack of sleep is exceptionally difficult. But, or I should say, however, it is something that needs to happen in a certain aspect, because that first 4 weeks is when you're really laying down the foundations to, every time your baby suckles, it boosts this hormone called prolactin. And what you want is that to keep boosting. And so your body goes, "Ooh, I'm going to make more milk." It doesn't literally do that, no panic. But inside, the milk cells are filling up and going, "Oh, you want some more? Oh, you still want some more." And it eventually, around about 2 weeks to 4 weeks, it gets to this kind of place where actually the volume you produce in the 24 hours stays until that baby is 6 months old. So your baby's drinking exactly the same, more or less, from 1 month to 6 months. And yet they almost triple their weight from their birth. So it's incredible. But in that first 4 weeks, Mother Nature has designed the fact that the baby will go to the breast frequently because this hormone needs frequent stimulation. Also, in the first week, the baby's tummy is pretty small and it's stretching slowly to accommodate these larger volumes. And so the baby's just getting used to it. If you pump in the day and you have a large amount that you've pumped, or you pump 2 or 3 times and then give your baby, say, for example, 60 mils in a bottle. One, the bottle teat, regardless of bottle teats, most of them flow quite quickly, or quicker than probably your breasts are flowing right now. And so the baby, it's easy. They just swallow. And so we go, wow, they drank it all. But perhaps 60 mils was 2 of your pumps. And so what happens is then this baby sleeps through maybe 6 hours, and it sounds like bliss. However, it might mean that you just don't give enough stimulation to the breast in this early phase when it absolutely has to have this stimulation. And so it could mean that you just end up not building enough milk in that first 2 to 4 weeks. And it could mean, if you do it regularly early on, that you never get to have a full milk supply. However, I will caveat that with, what is the most important is that your baby feeds a minimum of 8 times in 24 hours. So that might be really frequently during the day. And then all of a sudden at 1 a.m., they might sleep for 5 hours or 4 hours. Am I going to tell you to wake that baby? No, I'm going to say sleep, because that baby's still doing 8 times in 24 hours. So it's not about this regimen of like, wake the baby up every 3 hours, unless you have a really sleepy baby or a medical reason. If your baby is healthy and otherwise getting 8 feeds in their belly from you, and you're getting 8 times stimulation, there will be a gap where you can have a longer sleep, and that's marvelous. But wait at least 4 to 6 weeks before you start kind of playing around with your supply and adding things in, if there isn't a medical reason to do it beforehand. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It really does. I think as well, as you're saying all that on a practical note, I remember for one of my babies, what she did was had a really great sleep from about 9 p.m. till 1 or 2. And
Yeah.
seemed too early for me to go to bed, but that's a 5-hour chunk of sleep that would have really filled me up. And it took me a few days to realize that that's when I can get my sleep, then wake up and then have another 3 or 4 hours. And then that's kind of it. It really does fill your quota for the period. So to on that practical note, to just change your sleeping pattern so that waking often isn't quite such a load on your body.
Definitely. That is just the best advice, because often we're like, oh, it's 8:30. I don't go to bed at 8:30, but you're exhausted. Just go. And it, we talk about sleep when the baby sleeps. It's not always feasible, but even if you make sure there is 2 periods in the day where you just switch everything off and you darken the room, and you have, I'd say, at least 20 minutes, but longer if possible. But just even if you don't have a full sleep, do a yoga nidra, which is like a deep, non-sleep, deep rest meditation, can really boost you and just give you that energy you need to keep going a bit longer, because you might not fall to sleep properly, but do something that's relaxing your body and like relaxing the nervous system as well, just to keep you going and get as much support as you can. And I think the biggest thing, and you probably talk about this all the time, and it's hard for us, we are so queued up to not ask for help, but asking for help and or preparing that, these first 4 weeks are blooming exhausting. They really are. It's like you're doing night shifts, and unfortunately most babies want to feed more at night than in the daytime. So I'm really sorry, I can't change that. It's just how they are. But if you go into it knowing that, like if you've ever done night shifts, you know that you don't like have loads of people around, go out that day. Like you keep it low key before you start the night shift, and you prepare, and then you try and sleep as much as possible the next day, because you've got to keep going. This is like 4 weeks of kind of night shifts. So, and eventually they will change, and there's things we can help you to kind of change their sleep wake cycles, but just take it easy. Yeah.
So valuable. So it was a great segue, because I was just about to ask you what would a lactation consultant recommend for partners and support people, maybe the wider community and family of somebody breastfeeding? Is there something specific that you would recommend they do or learn or know?
I think one of the biggest things that can be really hard as a partner is that you feel like you're kind of not doing anything, because everything's about the baby, and the baby wants to be attached so often, and it can feel like quite a separation sometimes. And it is horrible for me to sit here and say, do the washing, clean the floors, do the washing up, make cups of tea, get the freezer meals out of the freezer. It's pretty horrible. However, it's really helpful. That is a massive job. And the other thing is that, so it doesn't feel so horrible, partners are really great at just having skin to skin. So not with a sleep suit on, not with a t-shirt on, skin to skin, just sitting there and reading to baby, or listening to something, or reading, the news. It doesn't matter what it is, just your voice is calming and bonding. Doing the baths together is really lovely as well, sitting in the bath. The other thing is that you can get really, when you are breastfeeding, often we get really hunched over for a long time, and we don't realize that we haven't just taken those 3 deep breaths to relax. And so partners, that massage technique you probably learned for birth, it's not wasted. Shoulders, neck, and actually massaging the neck can actually really help release oxytocin, and that's the hormone that helps push the milk out. Holding someone's feet as well is really grounding and calming. So if your partner is feeling quite stressed and anxious about the feeding, just if they like it, not everyone does, but gentle or just containment kind of holding on the shoulders, on the feet and ankles. These kind of just movements, obviously with permission, can feel really nice for the woman who's breastfeeding. So bonding in the way you can, but also it is, doing the household work, but also getting sleep. You're going to be exhausted too. So I'm really sorry. I give you, as partners and family and friends, get family and friends to do something. They should put a wash on or take a wash out. Any person that comes into your house should do something. Empty the dishwasher.
Also, they're happy to help. People like helping and it helps them feel good. And I have to remind people of that all the time. How do
Yeah.
you feel when you help someone? Oh, yeah, I like it. It's like, great. Because when you help somebody, you're growing that trust in your relationship that they trust me enough to let me help them. And
Yeah.
so having a baby can help these relationships develop when you ask for help and when you accept help.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Do you have often I get asked a lot about nipple creams and which is the best one, and to have it the second you have a baby. Do you have any advice around nipple creams? Because people are packing them in their bags, and somebody said recently, I've taken one of every one I could find to try and find the best one. So, what would you like to mention about nipple creams? And are they essential? Do they work? Or
This is a tricky question. I think I don't think you need to have one in your bag. However, most, particularly first time mums, will have some soreness to the nipples. And the nipple kind of ointments, because they're really like a thick gel, can be soothing for some women. You always want to use something with clean hands. Really important. Like often we might be changing a nappy and then we think, oh God, yeah, I need to just put that nipple cream on. And so if you've got a crack or an opening, what some of these nipple ointments can do is they just allow for the wound to heal from the bottom up. But there are no specific ointments that I would recommend over others. There are a million brands out there. There are a million small companies who make natural creams and ointments as well. I have seen some that have honey in them, and we wouldn't be advising honey to go into a baby before they're 1 year of age. So I don't know why some of them have honey in. So just look at the ingredients. But really, it's not a prevention. It's not going to stop you from having sore nipples. What stops you from having sore nipples is that the nipple goes into the right place into the baby's mouth, that the tongue is kind of massaging the underneath part, the areola. So the nipple cream's not going to help that. But if someone does have damage or a crack, they can be soothing. But it is about finding the brand that works for you. And like I'm in Europe, we have a whole host of European brands compared to what you guys have in Australia as well. So I can't give you a top one.
I just
Sorry.
thought I'll ask the tricky questions to the lactation consultant,
It's a really tricky
handball it
question.
over.
Yeah, thanks.
What about tricky question number two? Potentially, as you said, cream can't prevent it. Is there any preparation that's great for nipples ready for breastfeeding?
Oh, yeah, love this question. Easy answer, actually. No. So in the past, we did all sorts of horrible things to nipples. We would get you to rough up the nipple with like a rough towel or even brushes and horrible things. Actually, the breast and the nipple tissue is quite sensitive. If you're pressing or massaging too hard, you can cause bruising. And if you damage the nipple tissue, well, that's not a good start. So if you've heard any of these old wives' tales, ignore them. There is nothing you can do to harden the nipples, so to speak. So you don't even need to worry about it. Be kind, be gentle to your breasts and nipples. They will thank you for it.
Excellent advice. Talking about old wives' tales, is there one, or what, there's going to be many? What is, would you say, the most common misconception or myth, either about breastfeeding or what lactation consultants do?
That lactation consultants just want me to breastfeed. They just want you to breastfeed. They have no other agenda. And I think I want to come on here and say breastfeeding for all midwives or all good breastfeeding supporters, regardless of our title, it is not black or white. It's not breastfeeding or formula feeding. It is about the individual woman we're working with, the individual dyad, and that means the baby and the mother together, and the family. So then we go even wider because we need to bring in those dynamics of how your life works. And exclusive breastfeeding is not going to be the answer for every single person because of whatever's happening. And there can be stresses and strains that have come before or come in the postnatal period. And so it's about looking at what feeding method works best for both of you, where you are your most happiest, your most confident, and so is your baby's happy, but also gaining weight and healthy, and you're healthy. So that's the thing I want to say. Lactation consultants are not all about only exclusive breastfeeding. When you go and see one, they will be looking at what works best for you. And they will ask you what your goals are and what you want to achieve. And we'll work with you to give you the solutions, hopefully that work. So that's the biggest misconception.
Is there um, an amount of times you will end up seeing people on average? Is it kind of a long-term relationship you're having? Is it going to be a very expensive endeavor for people to engage your services? Or what would you say is the most amount of the average amount of times you see people, knowing we're all very individual and the issues are individual?
That's a great question, actually, especially when you're looking at a private lactation consultant, because it is an expense. For the, I would say really between 1 to 3 appointments. Often there's 2. A follow-up appointment tends to be much quicker. Clearly, it depends on the complexity. And sometimes we might follow up with sort of email or phone calls, but 2 is a good number to kind of have in your head of like you go in, a lot of information is exchanged, a feeding plan is exchanged. And then what happens is, feeding plans change pretty quickly because the volume of milk changes or the way your baby behaves at the breast, not as in behaves good or bad, but just the way they feed at the breast changes. And so a follow-up appointment can be really good just because you might be able to just absorb and take in 60% of the feeding plan because it's quite overwhelming. And then the follow-up appointments that last 40% just fine-tune things. And maybe you need a third appointment if it's more complex. But I would be factoring in two visits to a lactation consultant on average.
And that's why I asked, because I think people are concerned that it's how what's involved in it. And most people that I know who've seen one say that it was one session was fabulous and the next one was able to update the plan. Now all that's gone on board, and how's that going and what else can we do? So exactly what you said. So I think that's useful for people to know up front that it's you get great results, big bang for your buck when you see lactation.
We're not getting you to come and see us, every week for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or until your baby's 3. No, not at all.
I wanted to speak to you not only for your wonderful, brilliant way of delivering the information you have, is because I know that you have an education session that you can offer to parents so that they can find out so much about what they need to help them prepare so that they're less likely to hit those challenges with breastfeeding. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your individual service, what you offer, what parents can gain from your knowledge and service.
Thank you. At the moment, I have an online course because that is, worldwide and it's easy to do. I have one and one is being built. So the one at the moment is really built from the podcast. In terms of the podcast started out for midwives, it grew and grew and grew, and now we have so many pregnant women and women in the postpartum period and their families and partners listening. And what I saw in terms of for midwives and for birth workers, but also for women who had that level of knowledge, was this fundamental knowledge not being discussed in the average breastfeeding class or prenatal class or even training for midwives. And I think when we have the real deep fundamentals, which are simple, once you get them, you go, gosh, everything just makes sense. It clicks together and you can understand why someone would have had low milk supply. I've had women go through this course and say, oh my goodness, this just made so much sense to why things happened last time and it just didn't go to plan. I can go, oh, that makes sense. And this happened because of this. And now I know to do this and this and this. And that's what that course is. So it's the fundamentals of breastfeeding and lactation, because lactation's like what's going on in the cells, and breastfeeding is the act of breastfeeding. So this is a kind of combination course for health professionals, people in this world, but also you if you're pregnant. And what is coming soon, I do not have a date for it yet, but hopefully it's out by the time we are out. It's called the Feeding Couch, and this is a bigger course, but it's much smaller, 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 minute videos that will run you through really the groundings of breastfeeding in the first few months, to be honest. So it will look at positioning and attachment. It will look at all those foundations, but it looks at things like going back to work, what to do with sleepy babies, everything. But it is designed so that you can watch it while you're pregnant, but also you go, it's day 4. I've had no sleep. I really can't remember anything. Oh, I've got a problem. My baby won't attach. Click. Let's watch the video. My baby doesn't attach. They're the 3 things I can do. Oh, let me just watch that attachment position. I've got sore nipples. What do I do? I'm just going to watch this video. And so this is in progress, hopefully done by the time we're up. It's called The Feeding Couch. It's on my website. My website is katiejames.site. I had to think then. And you will find my courses there. You'll find links to the podcast. Also, if you do want to see me for a debrief or you want an antenatal preparation privately, one-to-one over Zoom, I also offer those. And we spend up to 2.5 hours. Some women prefer a one-to-one like this, where I can just talk through everything as I have my props, my babies, my breasts, my nipple shields, whatever you need. And we can talk through all of that. And we have 2.5 hours together. So that's a private thing I offer if you would like it.
Fabulous. The Feeding Couch, is that designed to be an additional extra from the existing course, specifically the one parents should go for?
It will be specific for parents who basically haven't found me through the podcast and maybe haven't listened to those episodes or want the sort of the full shebang. So this course is more aimed at during pregnancy and parents, whereas the other course is kind of aimed at the whole space of let's get everybody up and aware of these grounding foundations. In that one, I haven't gone through positioning and attachment, and you haven't seen me with balloons and the breasts and all of those things to talk about. So that the Feeding Couch is a main one for pregnant and expecting mums, dads, parents.
That sounds like it's going to be so useful, but I would love to tell people how useful your other course was. I'm a midwife. I get regular CPDs updates that I have to do training, and things in your course were still so valuable. It's the way you put it, it's the way it comes together nicely. So for doulas and midwives who are getting regular breastfeeding updates, there's still value in there. So it's such a wonderful training that I recommend everyone will get something from it, and even breastfeeding parents, knowing that there's your Feeding Couch is coming. That foundational knowledge, I think, is really valuable. So thank you for putting that out there. It looked like a lot of work and it was done so well. So, Katie, when you're thinking about your role and the things that you do, is there a time that you can think of that really stands out as something that makes your role special and why you love it?
I think it's seeing you, someone comes into your clinic room, and I can see many people that I've worked with, but there was one woman in particular, and she came in and she had gone around the houses quite a bit for with very sore nipples. And you will have experienced this as well. You go to put the baby on the breast, and like the shoulders are up and the brow is furrowed and there's tears rolling down already, because it's just got to this point where it's just, you're feeding so frequently because the baby's not getting enough milk, and then every feed hurts so much, and it's really distressing to see as well. And you want to be able to fix it. And so I'm there with my doll and my breast, and done all my funny movements with the balloon or the breast here, and had a few little smiles, and she's like, I feel ready to try. And so she puts the baby onto the breast, and this happens so many times. And then maybe there's a few adjustments, and maybe we have to take the baby off because that one was a bit of a toe curler. And then all of a sudden we do, which often I start with, which is skin to skin, and just watching the baby bring themselves down to the breast and attach. And no one had shown her this before, and she's sort of in this laid back feeding style, and just supporting the baby behind their shoulders and their bottom, and allowing natural reflexes, and just talking her through. And again, I think I held her feet with permission, just to help her relax her shoulders, and we breathe together as well. And then the baby attached, and she was so shocked. Like, she held her breath and then started to breathe, and there was no pain, or very little pain, because obviously if there's damage, we can't necessarily take 100% away. And she just looked at her baby, and it makes me well up now. Like, you have this so often, and she just looked at her baby and just tears, and then she just looked straight in my eyes and just went, I can do it. And it's just, see, I still get emotional. That's why I do this job, because it's being able to give that back. Like, it's the one thing so many women want to do, is to be able to, like, I've really got tears now, is to be able to feed their own baby, and to do it confidently and on their own. And to be able to have a skill where I don't have to interfere, but I can talk someone through most of the time, and to get her to that place where she goes, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm feeding my baby, and just crying. And then we're both crying. And it's lush. And it's special. And those moments are really special. And those moments happen in my job. And I just think sometimes, oh my God, I'd be working in the hospital. I get paid to do this job. How lucky am I? So, yes. See, I mean, if you ever have a private consult with me, I will probably have tears. I'm just one of those people. So I apologize in advance.
I think, though, it isn't just you've helped the feeding, which is virtually everything, but you've helped that relationship, and
Yeah.
that they can ease into what's coming as well.
Yeah, it's that transition into motherhood of feeling like I can do this. It's much more than just feeding, way more. And I think that's what we have to take on board, that sort of socio-psycho effect of transitioning into motherhood. And that's huge. It involves so many dynamics, and feeding is a major part of that. And so when you're a support person as well, when you're supporting that, you're supporting something so incredibly powerful, that it's this bond is being strengthened. And because that bond is so strong, there is much more trust in the partner to be, able to settle the baby and have their bonding moments as well, because it's going much better for the mom and the baby, if that makes sense. So the
Absolutely.
job of being supporting is not wasted. It's incredibly valuable.
When people are having issues breastfeeding, it's happening every feed all day, you're continually being reminded, if that's how you feel, that you're not getting it right many times a day, rather than it's just, I can't feed my baby. There's much more, like, as you say, that psychological element of I'm not doing it right, or I'm not enough, or that sense of failure, which can be assisted so easily often.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just that reassuring voice to, put some confidence and put some, like, buoy you up and just say, you're an amazing mum. You're doing an amazing job, even if that final decision becomes mixed feeding, so formula and breastfeeding, and isn't an end result of exclusive breastfeeding. If that's working, then that's amazing feeding. It's brilliant.
Being
It's
your
about,
choices rather than keeping you
yeah,
stuck as well.
totally.
Like, we've reached the time in the section when I ask all of our experts some practical parenting tips or advice or techniques. I wonder, is there one pearl of wisdom that you have, that is there something that you'd love every new mother to know or to be aware of?
Don't underestimate the importance of skin to skin contact. We are really good at advocating for skin to skin. So when you hold your baby with no clothes on, maybe a nappy for safety, it's up to you. And also completely naked, not just a little bit of a flap of a bra open, like top off, bra off, and then we can cover you up skin to skin. We're really good at advocating for the first golden hour. Should be the first 3 hours minimum anyway. But skin to skin with each feed, or as often as possible, just hanging out in skin to skin contact with your bambino, is going to just get all of their reflexes to do what babies are meant to do. And babies can actually find the breast and attach themselves. The other thing it does is it really helps us chill out and bonding, but it regulates their temperature. They cry much less. It helps them settle. It helps them get enough feeds, and it feels lovely. And skin to skin can happen with you, with your partner. Enjoy it. It is, honestly, it's like the key to getting breastfeeding off to a good start and continuing. And it should not be underestimated, the power of this very simple and free technique. So I just get everyone I can naked within reason, top naked, and then we cover you up. The other thing skin to skin does is, if you're at home and you've got visitors coming and you just are having breastfeeding problems and you just think, God, I just wish, I don't want people coming around and holding my baby. Well, hold them in skin to skin with a towel around you, because no one's going to put their hands in and pick your baby up because they know you're naked underneath. So you can just say, we're having skin to skin contact right now, so I just need to be with my baby. You can have a look at baby, but he or she needs to be with me.
Great tip. Also, I was one of those people who were fortunate enough to have a really good letdown from the other breast. Got any tips of what to do with that leaking milk as you've got your baby skin to skin?
Yeah. This is a tricky one, because there are devices out there which are like called pumps. They're not really a pump because they don't have proper vacuum, but they do have some vacuum. They're like a silicone that attaches. However, they can cause more milk to come. And I'm really cautious about these in terms of engorgement and mastitis, particularly because we know that mastitis is really from this sort of oversupply. So if you are having, you get a letdown on both, or milk comes out of both sides. If you're having dripping milk and it's just a little bit and you've got plenty, then just put not a rag, that sounds awful, but like a face washer underneath, or you can have a little cup or a bottle to collect it. But I'm really cautious about the silicone pumps, as they're called, as an across the board, me saying this, yeah, go and get one. I would like to look at individual women to see if it's useful, because if you're someone with on the borders of too much milk, this could end up with inflammation and mastitis. So I'm an absolute no for that. So just be cautious about that. Rolled up face washer, or catch the milk in a clean sanitized, because it's not sterilized, it's sanitized container. But that can also be a real faff, hence why they introduce the one that sticks on your breast. But sorry, it's not a perfect answer.
That's why I sneakily snuck it in there, because they are so commonly, I see them on people on social media the whole time. There's something on the other breast. It's not just soaking up that, and I know it's not as simple as doing that, because you can, it might be convenient, but it's not always the best. Is there something that you would love every new partner to know or to be aware of?
I think skin to skin for them as well, because then it's not all dishes and vacuuming. It's like bond with your baby. I suppose you don't bond with your baby just from breastfeeding. And it's not all nappies and washing up. Yes, go in the bath together, go in the shower, read to them, sing, settle them, and get in skin to skin. And do not worry if you've got a really hairy chest. It's fine, totally fine. Babies just love the sound of your heartbeat, the smell of your skin, the sound of your voice and movement. And you are an amazing person for them to bond with. So yeah, also get naked, get into skin to skin, and enjoy bonding with your baby.
That's fabulous. And I think even though we have covered it, it's nice to emphasize that there are things that support people can enjoy from this period, because it is hard work.
Yeah,
and to have that downtime is really valuable. Marvelous. Is there one practical tip, if you had to just put one out there from all of your experience of working with people with these new babies, one thing that you would recommend people think about or do?
go and learn about this baby-led breastfeeding that I just did. So where we lean back, it's called laid back breastfeeding or biological nurturing. It's a mouthful. There's a website, you can type in biological nurturing by Suzanne Colson. She's an amazing researcher and she has videos on there. You'll find them everywhere, but she's the person. And it just shows you all the reflexes that your baby's using. Like babies will do this kind of stepping motion. It's not just for fun when the pediatrician checks your baby or the midwife. It's because they can like scoot their way up the breast and they use their arms. And, you know, but full-term healthy babies can lift their heads up. So be warned, they can move places. And I think this style of breastfeeding, of really utilizing what we're born with, we're mammals, we can find the breast ourselves. Utilizing this as your first step is really helpful for breastfeeding, and not just the first breastfeed, but future breastfeeds.
Cool. So is that included in your course?
Absolutely. We talk about infant reflexes and all different types of positioning and attachment. We look at alignment. We look at some of the traditional, some of the old hat. And, you know, you might find that there are some places out there that talk about one specific way. As a lactation consultant, for me, there is no one specific way. There are specific things that need to happen. And it's about achieving that for the ergonomics of your body. You know, we're not all the same size. We don't all look, unfortunately, like all of the breastfeeding videos that we see, which are seriously boring because it tends to be the same shape, size, breast and woman. And we haven't all had the same type of birth and we don't all have the same size baby. So, you know, sometimes we're going to try different positions and we're going to say, do you know what? It doesn't really feel comfortable. So we're going to just move it and make it flexible and work it out to you. So in my course, there's a lot of different positioning videos that are short so that you can have a look from different angles to see what would work for you. It's really important.
Fantastic. I really think that's going to be very valuable. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited.
Thanks.
Is there one, thinking about, again, your experience with people with new babies, is there something, one item or product or service that is definitely overrated?
Yes. It's a tricky one because it's going to be overrated and underrated. So overrated is buying yourself a breast pump while you're pregnant. And the reason for this is you don't know if you're going to need one, how much you're going to use it, and in what circumstances you will use it. You might have an idea, I'm going back to work, for example, at 6 months, and I'm going to go back 2 days a week. Well, maybe circumstances change. Unfortunately, life throws us lemons and we have to make lemonade. And you might go, oh, I actually need to go back to work a bit more, or I need to go back earlier. And you've gone and paid out for a single electric breast pump, and you've got to pump on both breasts much more frequently than you thought. You're going to have wanted to have spent that extra $100 on buying a double electric pump. And now you're stuck with the single, or you go and buy another pump. So it's a waste of money. You don't need to do this. The other thing is, what's underrated from breast pumps is that if you are struggling in the first few days and weeks, remember what you do in the first 4 weeks really sets you up to have enough milk supply. And if you are having problems with your baby's really sleepy, they're unwell, there's a reason that they're not attaching properly, or you have low milk supply, then what we recommend and what the research supports is that you actually use a hospital grade higher breast pump. And there are different makes on the market. And the reason for that is they have a different functioning pattern, and it's been shown in the research. And so you might think, oh my God, I have to pay whatever, 30, $50 a week for this hired breast pump. I could just go and buy one, a single breast pump. However, it's not going to do the same job. And so having the right piece of equipment at the right time is really important. And if you've bought that breast pump at 32 weeks of pregnancy and you spent whatever, 100, $200 already, and then I say to you, you need to hire a pump, you're probably going to go, I'm not going to hire it. I've just spent money, and you'll use the other pump. What could happen is that you end up not building enough milk supply. And so actually it ends up costing you money if you don't make a full milk supply, because you've got to pay for formula and all the paraphernalia and the bottles of blah, 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 blah. So having the right piece of equipment at the right time, if or when you need it, is important. So don't jump the gun. Don't put it on your baby shower. And if you need one, then get the right one.
Marvelous advice. So what, to recap, you're saying a hospital grade double pump when you know there are issues, and wait and see otherwise.
Yes.
In the first 4 weeks.
And other pumps that you can buy on the market are designed for when your milk supply is established. So around 4 weeks. And then, because it's not about building milk supply, it's about maintaining milk supply. And that's the difference. Building milk supply, you need to hire a hospital grade pump. Maintaining milk supply, you can use, whatever's out there on the market, whatever you feel like works for you. But those important weeks, let's not mess around with it. Get the right equipment, because it's so sad if we could have built your milk supply up, but we used the wrong piece of equipment.
I'm wondering if that also would fit into my next category, contemplated, something that parents want or think they should have, but it's either it's too expensive, or it's something that wasn't available in maybe their area geographically. Is there something else would fit into that category, or do you want to lump your breast pumps into there as well?
I want to lump my breast pumps into there, because I think it's I've worked a lot with women whose babies are in the neonatal unit, and they had bought pumps previously, and it's really tricky to think I've got to fork out again more money to get a higher pump. However, it makes a massive difference. And so just save that money. And if you need it, you might never need a pump. You might have a baby that you express some milk, and you know what? They're just those babies who don't take a bottle. And so you've got to wait to a certain stage and then you cup feed them, so all of those dynamics could come in. So I think just save your money, contemplate over not needing a breast pump and not having to fork out that money, and then treating yourself with $200 that you've saved on something else.
Absolutely. A beautiful foot massage, for instance, or a breastfeeding course.
Yes, or a lactation consultant visit if you needed it.
Marvelous. Is there something that you would recommend that parents consider the environmental impact and do something more environmentally friendly or something that involves less waste?
I think if they're breastfeeding and able to breastfeed, I should say as well, then that is the biggest saving for the environment that there possibly could be. However, I also want to caveat that with, if you are unable to breastfeed for whatever reason, please don't add all that guilt on top of you. For me, the thing with babies is you can get so much good stuff secondhand. Really, a baby needs a warm place to be. And as my wonderful colleague always said, put the baby in the kitchen. This is the kitchen. Okay. So skin to skin, nice blankets, whatever sleep suits you've got from the op shop, really. And a sling. A sling is like worth its weight in gold, really, but you can get them secondhand. How many people have finished having their babies and they're getting rid of stuff? Like, that's good for the environment. Get your stuff secondhand, wash it. You don't really need much. That's overrated. I mean, I've covered it all in those things. So secondhand stuff, but don't get a personal use pump secondhand. Okay. They're not designed for that. Like, you don't know what's gone in. So,
Okay, so that's your advice. Do not buy those pre-owned.
no, when they're personal use, all the manufacturers say you shouldn't buy, you shouldn't, you should, it's a personal use, hence you shouldn't share it. Whereas a hospital grade is a multi-user. So they have, yeah, I'm just, I can only go with what the manufacturers say, but just be cautious. Like, it is a bodily fluid. Yep, but everything else, buy secondhand clothes, totally. I can put it in a 60 wash. Bed linen, and also not a bed. I mean, you would have covered that, you know, a new mattress is really important for safe sleeping. So there's certain things you should buy new, other things, get them secondhand.
I was wondering, something that I read a lot about is advised to say that you should get some formula in just in case.
It is tricky. I would have a big fat no to it. Because go and listen to the episode, because it's all there for you on the podcast. It will make it really clear as to how this can be a slippery slope, particularly at 3 a.m. When we have formula there and we're having a difficult night, it can be really easy for a partner to think they're doing the best thing, or a family member, and say, look, there's a bit of formula there. You just need some sleep. Let me just give a bit of formula. And this can be a really easy slippery slope into the top up trap. However, have I used a bit of formula to just get things back on track as a lactation consultant? Totally. Totally. Because this is this before this. This is looking at the dynamics and the psychological well-being of mum, dad, parent, partners, family, baby. And there are those dynamics. But to just willy-nilly give formula without knowing, okay, I've probably got a lactation visit tomorrow, or the midwife's coming to see me tomorrow. This can just be that tricky ground of going into a bit of a deep slope of reducing your milk supply. So I say it with caution. It's not an absolutely a no, we would never use that, because sometimes we do, but can be really, it's like that constant seed of doubt that you're not good enough, and it's sitting there every time you open the cupboard, and anyone who sees it thinks that they're doing the best thing for you by making up 90 mils, and just your baby, of course they drink it because it's a teat and it just flows, and it makes you feel a bit rubbish. It makes you feel not good enough, and again, that's another seed of doubt. So I think just be cautious. You don't need to buy a tin of formula just in case. Your body's grown this baby and done all of these things and gone through birth. It may have a few hiccups along the way, but you will, for the majority of women, if we get in there quick enough, they will make enough milk for their baby.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We were talking about your service. How can people access you? Simply sending you an email? What's the best way to go about getting your services?
The best way to find me is through my website, katiejames.site, and then there's a contact form there, and there's more information about courses, the consults I hold, and contact form if you've got another question that you want to ask me, and we can organize a time together. You can buy the courses easily, like you can on any platform, and you can also find me on social media. I am at The Midwife's Cauldron, so I'm under the name of the podcast. That is me, and you can find podcasty things, and now some breastfeeding golden nuggets there as well sometimes.
And Katie, I can't thank you enough for making the time to have this conversation with me today. And I'd like to take this opportunity to formally thank you for your breastfeeding and lactation course. I found it as a midwife incredibly useful. There were things in there that I didn't know or fully understand, and you really had some clarity around there. I would suggest that anyone who works to support women having babies and breastfeeding to do your course. I think there is every chance that they will find it completely invaluable. And for those people approaching birth, I always recommend your course. I think it's fantastic information that will really help set them up for success. And as for the feeding couch, I am so grateful for you to have something that I can recommend as a resource for new parents as they navigate breastfeeding in those early days and weeks. And finally, before we go, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for your podcast, The Midwife's Cauldron, that you co-create with Dr. Rachel Reed. I've just heard that it's been 3 years and you've had 1 million downloads, which is an incredible achievement. But I think the success is because the way you present so wonderfully, there's humor, there's generosity of knowledge, you have an incredible range of experts on such a wide variety of topics. I think it is compulsory listening for anyone working in the birth area, working with new parents, or for people who are parents or becoming parents. It's really incredibly fantastic. So thank you so much. I can't wait for the next episode to drop, and I'll be tuning in. Thank you so much for being with me, Katie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.